Good,
Awesome.
good evening, everybody. Welcome for joining us tonight. We appreciate you taking time of your evening on a Thursday to join us to learn more about Wafa House and the work we do and meet our great speaker. So I would start by introducing Ruwaida Abdulaziz is an investigative reporter where she spearheads the coverage of Islamophobia and its intersection with politics, culture, and gender. Notable works exposing anti-Muslim policies have led to the reunification of families and the reopening of hate crime cases. Ruwaida's reporting has been recognized internationally and has won several awards, including the 2024 Wilbur Award of Excellence and the 2022 Goldsai Award. In 2021, she was also awarded the prestigious Journalist of Color Reporting Fellowship by the Investigative Reporters and Editors. In her free time, she mentors young journalists and travels the world to discuss her reporting on Muslim issues. So, Rita, the floor is yours, and we'll be hearing.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming and making time out of your day to be with us here. This is an incredibly important event, and I'm incredibly honored to be speaking to everyone about this. It is definitely a difficult topic, but an important one. And so, to give everyone here a rundown of what our programming tonight is going to look like, I'm going to be talking, giving my remarks a little bit about some of the reporting that I have done on this issue, my travels across the US, and what it was like interviewing dozens of Muslim women who spoke with me for a report that I had written previously about what it was like being a survivor in the Muslim American community. Shortly thereafter, we'll go into a panel discussion with the rest of the staff where they're all speaking about their individual roles and the important work that they do at Wafa House and tying it to the broader topic at hand. And we're really looking forward to hearing from everyone and to learning more just about the issue, but also the problem, the solution, and all the ways that different members of the community are certainly tackling it. With that being said, I remember when I began my investigation, when I began this report of mine, looking to interview survivors of violence, of domestic violence, speaking to Muslim women across the country. And I was looking for data. And to put it quite blankly, finding data about violence against Muslim women was
Wait,
difficult.
I'm sorry
And
to
there's,
interrupt you, but I think there is it's not very clear. I don't know if there's an echo or
okay,
your mic is not very clear. The
the mic
voice.
is not very clear. Okay, let's fix this. I'm gonna fix this right now. 1 second.
Taking off the headphones. How does it sound now? Is this a little bit better?
Much better. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to take like very quickly from the top. As I was mentioning, went on to this investigation to write this story about the issues that Muslim women across the American country were facing when it came to issues of domestic violence. And the first thing that I did as a journalist was look up the data and wanting to come up with data to include in my report to talk about this issue. And to be quite frank, there wasn't many. There's very little and very scarce data, and I'll get into the reasons why. But we know that 1 in 4 women have been victims of severe domestic abuse across the country, and that domestic violence does not discriminate. Victims have spanned all races, ages, ethnicities, and religion. And women who identify as Muslim, people who've come from Muslim backgrounds, are in that same camp. There is one study I found in 2011 by the organization called the Peaceful Families Project, which does very similar work out in the DMV area, that have noted that 53% of Muslims knew someone who was experiencing some sort of abuse, and that nearly 66% of Muslims knew of a Muslim who was suffering abuse, and 53% were facing some sort of abuse themselves. That's more than half of members of our community. And while they all had unique stories, there were some commonalities between all of them. And some of the challenges that they faced was similar to the challenges that any woman faces, which is that shame and fear are powerful silencers. The want and the desire to seek help and to speak up was incredibly difficult. Now, those issues were compounded and exacerbated if they came from a minority background, particularly a Muslim background. Some of these Muslim women were immigrants and were afraid of speaking up and losing their status. Or perhaps their abusers were the reasons why they had status in the first place. So they decided to stay silent. Some had limited knowledge about shelters and if there was any agencies that provided help. Some of the women who I've spoken to have actually gone to some of these shelters to only re-experience Islamophobia, stereotypes, and abuse there. I remember one story of one woman telling me that clients of hers, when they went to seek help at local shelters, were told, well, isn't this normal in your religion? Isn't this how your men are supposed to act? And it's because of that barrier of knowing that abusers will abuse anything they have, whether that's faith or otherwise, so that they can hold on to power and continue to oppress women, that sent them back to the situations that they were in the first place. Issues like mental health, issues like families and women who've had small children who didn't want to leave some sort of sense of security because they didn't have financial help to receive their own homes, access to a lawyer, someone who spoke their language, etc. Nearly all of the women I've spoken to have agreed that this was not a religious issue. It had nothing to do with the faith and everything to do with access to community, access to resources, and access to help. And that they wish that more people in their community spoke up. So that shame that we were talking about earlier would no longer be the reason that they were able to walk into their local mosque, that they were able to go to their local leadership and say, I need help. I remember a woman talking to me. She was a young woman who, her mother was shot and killed in front of her eyes, a young woman out living in California, talking about the fear that her mother felt in terms of being worried of reinforcing the stereotype that she was a Muslim woman who wasn't able to get help and that her spouse was someone who was violent. And that made her hesitate in reaching out to getting proper help in time. That Islamophobia has perpetuated all of our systems. That in the Black Muslim community, there's a fear of calling the police, that they would make the problem worse instead of helping. And that in communities where legal status that I mentioned earlier was an issue in South Asians, Arab, or Latino communities was something that they weren't able to navigate. And that a real reality for a lot of these women, that they discussed that access to faith was actually is what helped them move on. It's what helped them realize what their rights were. It's what helped them know that they deserved better and that their faith told them that they deserved better. And so that when they have the whole world against them, a lot of them said that when the mainstream agencies were perpetuating the Islamophobia and they hate themselves, they were perpetuating the misogyny themselves, that they were able to go somewhere where they would be able to find a safe space for themselves as women of a minority background, but also women who wanted to seek help. And I think that's why it's incredibly important for organizations like Wafa House, for example, create a unique niche space for that help. And understanding the complexities, whether that's the immigration status, whether that's the religious status, whether that's the status of being in this community, and knowing that they are able to navigate the outside world of lawyers, resources, and the different challenges that Muslim women happen to face. Now, we talked about how domestic violence plagues most faith communities equally. And I want to go back to that stereotype that many people feel like they need to brush the conversation under the rug. We don't want to perpetuate the stereotype that Muslim men are violent and that Muslim women constantly face violence and are oppressed. There was a study by ISPU that came out that said that domestic violence actually impacts faith communities quite equally, that it impacted the Muslim community around approximately 13%. The Catholic community was around 17%, people who didn't affiliate with a religion about 14%, and the general public was at 15%. So the numbers are pretty much the same, completely dispelling the stereotype that faith here was any much of a reason as to why these women were in their predicament. In creating this really important conversation in talking about the realities of the other issues, the reinforced Islamophobia in the institutions, the community shames, and the taboo, and the impact that this has. There was a domestic violence hotline nationally that said it received over 20,000 calls on a typical day, on a day-to-day basis. And it's incredibly important that we face and we know the faces, the voices behind those calls, that it looks like people in our community, that it sounds like people speaking languages that we speak, and that the call for help is the same. And it's just a matter of accessing those phone calls. Will the people on the other side of the hotlines understand the unique situations that Muslim women are in? Now, understanding the role of faith is also incredibly important. The women that I've spoken with across the country have all agreed they wish there were more organizations that did this work. They wish that people on the front line, whether that they were imams, whether that they were community leaders, whether that they were Muslim-based organizations, did more to help these women, that they spoke up more, that they went out and reached out more, that there was a plethora of resources, one that was holistic, that was involving therapy, that involved financial aid, that involved some sort of counseling in order to help a woman wholeheartedly as is in her journey to recovery. I spoke to an imam out in New York City who talked about oftentimes when things get difficult is that imams can be hired in fiqh. They know how to run a mosque, but sometimes stop short when it comes to talking to women survivors. And that more needed to be done to bridge the gap between the faith leaders and the women and the activists and the organizers and the people who work for organizations like Wafa House so that they can work in conjunction and not just identifying the problem, but finding the solutions. Because the truth of the matter is, my reporting found that it doesn't just impact the woman. It impacts families and it impacts generations to come. When a child grows up and works in a family and sees a family that is experiencing some sort of abuse, impacts how well he does in school, impacts how well she does at work, impacts how much internalized Islamophobia a young Muslim may have. Though the same study also found, and I think this is also incredibly important to mention, that Muslims were most likely to report domestic violence to their faith leader. So they were speaking up, and oftentimes they were going to their local faith leader for help first. And so how are we creating the channels beyond the local faith leaders to receive to organizations and to continue to grow a safe space in the community? I remember talking to women who were as old, older in their 70s, who had experienced some sort of abuse. I've met young teenagers who've discussed some sort of abuse. And oftentimes the abuse that they were facing was from someone they knew, which meant it was someone the community knew. And by and large, it was an issue that impacted the community as a whole. Fighting this stigma is incredibly important. It is incredibly important because it saves lives. I remember when I was writing the story, there were some people who weren't a fan of the investigation. They said there's so much negativity and negative stigma around the Muslim community to begin with. We already have Islamophobia coming from Washington, D.C. We have local hate crimes. Why discuss something that is airing out our dirty laundry, essentially? And my response in publishing this story was this: this is a real issue. If we don't talk about it, it doesn't mean it'll just go away. Writing about it not just normalizes it, but it also raises the point that sunshine is the best disinfectant. That beginning by having difficult conversations, we begin to have solutions. And so it's not a matter of airing out dirty laundry, but it's a matter of giving a voice to the women who don't get spoken to and doing their story justice, which means by being true to their narrative, but also providing the real data that talks about that this isn't an issue that is unique to our community, but it is an issue that does plague our community. And that is the fine line between talking about something and letting it sit, and writing a story in a report, and then talking to the organizations and the survivors and letting our community know that this is real and that the conversations need to be had and that the solutions afterwards need to be built. And so I'm really looking forward to the panel discussions of tonight to talk about some of these issues, to talk about the reality on the ground, and to talk to the experts. I was able to write this report and this investigation as a journalist, but this is just the beginning. More stories are needed. The people who are doing this work day in and day out know better than me. And so I'm looking forward to bringing back Dr. Hasna and her staff for all of us to discuss some of these challenges and to go a little bit deeper into this conversation about the work that you all do, and how everyone can be involved. And so with that, I'd like to bring back Dr. Hasna, who you all know is the executive director of Wafa House, Eliane Mustafa, who is the program director, Jasmine Elatab, who is the legal department supervisor, Sabrine Yunus, our case management supervisor, and Sally Hanna, the clinical supervisor. Thank you all for joining. Let's dive right in. So let's be real. This is difficult work, and sometimes one that is not exactly rewarding when you're doing this type of work day in and day out. I've had a little bit of that experience as a journalist, but you guys do this every single day. Dr. Hassan, I want to start with you, and I want to make sure everyone answers this question. Why? Why do this? What brings you to this work?
Thank you so much, Ruwaida, and thank you for everybody who just joined us. What brings me to this work is I'm a survivor myself. It's been a long journey of healing. I did my research on the topic. I volunteered on the hotline, so it's a cause that's near and dear to my heart to continue work of prevention and intervention. Generally, underserved communities and people of color, women of color, we have, as you mentioned, unique circumstances and intersections and different structural and, forces that shape our experiences. Muslim women in particular, as a Muslim, I identify as a Muslim woman, we kind of have this, when I did my research, it's like one of two. We are either portrayed as these victim women in need of saving, and we have to come and teach them what is gender equity and how to live their lives, as you mentioned, or we are kind of prompted as these superheroes that are resilient and that kind of, defy all these forces. So humanizing our stories, as you said, violence doesn't differentiate between any, it affects people regardless. And so what brings me to this work is my passion. It's a healing journey, continuing healing journey for me. And, supporting the amazing work that Wafa House started 20 years ago. I mean, this is the 20th anniversary. The founders saw the need in the community, and it started off as volunteer work, and now it's a big institution with a reputation in the community, providing crucial services in, culturally specific and in Arabic and multiple languages. So it's important, and it makes me want to do more of that. And then give the floor for others to share.
How about you, Eliane?
Yeah, I can share. So I've been in the nonprofit sector since my career, my short career. I've been working with different nonprofits here in New Jersey, and I've always felt a calling to kind of work closer to the community in which I'm from because I kind of have a deep understanding of what it's like to be like a Muslim woman, an Arab woman, the stigma that comes along with talking about these type of issues. So I've always kind of felt a calling to do this kind of work. So I came to Waffle House in December, and I'm very proud to work. I mean, as soon as I started working here, I remember that one of my first days, I saw a client actually come into the office, and I remember thinking like, okay, like I made the right choice. Just because I felt like when that client came in, I actually saw the impact that the case manager had on that client, and there was something really, really special about that. And in my role, I don't necessarily serve clients, and I think that's a good place for me to be because as much as I want to support and uplift the organization, I really hold a lot of respect for our staff who are providing that direct service. I think it takes a huge toll and a huge emotional toll to do this work. So yeah, I really feel proud and I feel called to be a support for survivors and to be one of the people who can find the courage to speak up about domestic violence in this community. So that's kind of why I'm here.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Jasmine.
Okay. So you, Ilian, mentioned part of it, and actually, Rowetta, you mentioned part of it. And it's this similar theme of speaking up for people who don't have a voice. I forget the exact words you used, but it's that idea of the people coming in come in as confused, lost, hurt, processing a lot, and completely clueless about what to do next. And so it's about being able to sit down with them, listen to their story, which I think is a unique thing that doesn't usually happen in the legal context, really listening to what has happened to them and trying to figure out a solution of what can be done. And being able to sit with people who actually understand that they have an ear to listen to them rather than just kind of going through the motions of filing paperwork and showing up at a hearing. So just being able to use the skill sets that I've developed over time that we have as a team to be able to make a difference for people who really wouldn't probably be able to do it on their own, standing before a judge or advocating for themselves.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. Sabine.
All right. Hi everyone. So I started working at Waffle House 5 years ago. And when I first started, I was part-time intern, part-time case manager. And it's funny because when I first started working at Waffle House, I wanted to intern because my focus was actually children. Because I had a minor in like child advocacy and policy, and I thought that my work was more focused on working with kids. But then as I started working for Waffle House, I realized how much the community needs like our support and help. And I haven't been able to really find myself trying to work somewhere else or figuring out maybe working for other causes. But for me, domestic violence is like very near and dear to my heart because I do know some people in my life that have experienced that as well. And I grew up in northern New Jersey, like that's where I was born and raised. I was born within that community. So I do know like the things that do happen. But for me, like I agree with the mission and values of the agency, like to preserve and strengthen the family through intervention and education. So that resonates with me and my values, and I'm very proud to contribute by creating like a safer, more supportive like environment for those in need. And just advocating for those who need the help, and not just by providing them like the support when they know that they're talking to someone who is able to resonate with them like religiously or culturally. They feel like they can open up the minute they speak to you and just be vulnerable and talk about what they really need because they don't have others around them that are able to help them. So for me, that means a lot. And, you know, just being there as a support system is something that I love doing, and the job is very rewarding. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you so much, Sabrine. Sally.
I'm the newest one here. I've only been here since April. I've worked I think I just wanted to work somewhere that was culturally, from my background and culture, being that I'm Egyptian, Arab, and I've worked in many, many clinics that served a lot of underserved populations, but they were mainly Hispanic populations. And so I thought Waffle House would be amazing because it is such a rare thing to be able to find a entire group that speaks Arabic and is able to give culturally appropriate services across the board. It's so unique and it's wonderful to be able to give back to our actual culture. So that was my thought process. But I don't work directly with clients either. So I'm secondhand listening to what's going on with them. It's it's a lot sometimes.
Of course, and I think one incredible thing, I briefly served on the board of another domestic violence agency, and I think one thing we all can agree on is that you don't have to be client facing to understand the importance of this work. You don't have to be in this industry, right? My practice is as a journalist here, to understand the importance of this work, and I think this is something that is a huge takeaway that we've all touched upon so far in halfway through our session here. So on that similar topic, a question for our counseling and our case management and legal team. And let's start with Jasmine. Talk to me about some of the misconceptions that you guys hear from either from clients or just from people generally speaking when it comes to the issue. What are some the top maybe two misconceptions that
Well, I think the biggest thing that comes to mind is the fact that when they come to us for a legal issue, they don't necessarily know what constitutes domestic violence. There are different ideas culturally of what is considered violence and legally what is considered violence. And that ends up being probably the biggest issue around what their rights are and what can be done to protect them or preserve their rights. And the second issue I would say is that there's also confusion between the clients about what their rights would be Islamically and what their rights would be legally. So that sometimes takes a lot of teasing out too. So it's a lot of conversation. It's a lot of explaining to them something that they really haven't had the chance to learn on their own, maybe because they're new to the country or maybe because they haven't had access to learning about the legal system. But it's a lot of teaching them about things that this is the first time they've heard anything about it.
That's such an interesting one, the Islamic rights versus the legal rights, and that must be really hard. I'm really glad that you mentioned that. Sabrine, Sally, anything to expand on when it comes to the misconceptions that you want to add on to?
Yeah, I can go ahead. So Jasmine kind of like touched up on, the beginning part of when she mentioned the misconceptions of like what constitutes like domestic violence. So one of the biggest, I guess, misconceptions a lot of clients have is they don't know all the forms of like domestic violence, like abuse that they can probably are probably facing, but they don't know that actually is abuse. So like the biggest one could be like, many people think it's just physical abuse, but it's more than just physical. It could be like emotional, psychological, and a lot of the clients that we do work with have faced a lot of like financial abuse, especially if they have like, are new to the country and the husband is like very controlling and manipulative and he just wants her to just stay secluded and away from everyone. So she's solely relying on this person for everything in terms of finances, whether it's like rent, basic necessities. So that's like a very like evident like form that we always have our clients face. And that's like where it kind of causes a lot of like issues for them. And the second part I would say really is that it's easy for them to leave. It's really not that easy for individuals to leave a relationship, even if they're being abused. Because there's a lot of it that goes into play, like whether it's kids, whether they have a lot of barriers, they can't speak the language, they don't have documentation, they don't have family. So there's a lot that goes into it that makes it harder for them to try and leave and just become independent. So like at Waffle House, we try to provide them with like comprehensive like support services where like we just go from like the beginning to the end of like what different scenarios might look like with them. So that way, if they want to leave, we want to make sure they're prepared to leave and that leaving is like not the first thing you do because there's safety, protocols that go into place and things like that. So I would say, the different forms of like domestic violence abuse is not only physical and that it's not just easy to leave a relationship as difficult as that might sound.
Amazing. Anything else anyone would like to add on the misconception question? I'm glad that you mentioned that, Sabine. I think one thing I remember when I was talking to one survivor, she mentioned that she didn't wanted to see her abuser in jail. I remember her mentioning, and she said, I know this sounds controversial. She's like, I don't want to see him deported. She said, I just want to be safe. I just want to be separated. I just want my child to be free and separated. And I think oftentimes people assume that, these women want full retaliation, and they are maybe in the right, and most of the time they are in the right to ask for so. But the majority of women didn't. It wasn't about seeking revenge or justice. It was more about finding safety and security for themselves. So I remember that being particularly noteworthy and coming up in my reporting. And so I am glad that all of you mentioned all those really important misconceptions. I want to shift to Inyan with you for this next question. There are lots of organizations out there nationwide, but also in Jersey, New York, right? In our area in particular. What makes Waffle House stand out? What makes this organization different?
Yeah, I think one of the main things that I could even remember the first time I heard about Waffle House, I was an undergrad actually, and I was looking for a place to do an internship. And one of my professors asked me like, "Oh, like you're Muslim. Have you ever heard of Waffle House? I know they provide services to survivors." And I remember going online and Googling and just being really shocked because I was very young at the time, didn't really understand that much about what I wanted to do, what type of work I was going to get into. And I just remember being so just shocked to know that there was a nonprofit organization, primarily government funded, that is providing direct services to Muslims, Arabs, South Asians who are experiencing this issue. So I think for the most part, what makes Waffle House unique and really, really special is that all of our staff, for the most part, are coming from the community in which we're serving. So there's that cultural element where we all kind of have a deeper understanding and are able to kind of maybe not necessarily put ourselves in that person's shoes, but in a sense, we do have a deeper understanding of what the circumstances are that that makes this situation so difficult for the person. Like, why are they struggling to leave? Like, what community elements are at play here? So I think for the most part, like that for me is what makes Waffle House so special and why I've always had a calling to come work here. But I think it's that understanding that like our staff and our team really do come with a deeper understanding. And just a safer space for survivors. So yeah.
I love that. Thank you. Hasna, anything from your end about what makes Waffle House particularly unique?
Honestly, I would like to read a testimonial that we just received from a client because I don't think whatever I'm going to say is going to do this justice. So it's from our clinician, Hiba, and she shared that testimonial with me. So I'm just going to read. Overcoming sexual assault is a hard thing to do on your own. It's taboo, and most family and friends will not only understand, but they are not trained with tools to talk to you through and encourage you at the same time. This only leads to feeling more negative and alone. I'm so thankful I was led to receive help with Waffle House therapists. They have given me tools to get through the day, and learn to get out of bed. They have helped me to process what has felt like a nightmare and seek growth and positive qualities that I'm building as I go through this. I'm still rebuilding a shadowed confidence, but because of the help from Waffle House, I can confidently say with the time, I'll slowly get there. And this is not just special. This testimony is not just special to our clinicians. Our legal team had testimonies from clients, similar case management. And so this is what makes Waffle House unique, is that people come in and they have a brilliant team of everyone working to address their needs. Sometimes clients don't even disclose when they come. They're just coming to seek any basic services. And then when they feel comfortable, they share. And then they go to legal, they go to clinical, they go to receive direct financial assistance. And so it's like it's a house, it's a home that provides them with all the support that they need. And I wish we could, I would love to see Waffle House grows into kind of being in multiple places because, not every day, it's not still having that cultural awareness and that, the bilingual support is still not, especially for the Muslim Arab community. We need more of that. So that's why.
Thank you for sharing that incredible testimonial. And what better way to understand the organization than through someone who's walked through those doors. I really am grateful that you're able to share that with us. Sally, this is a question for you and anyone else who'd like to jump in, but I'd love to hear what are some of the needs that when the clients do walk in those doors, like, Dr. Hasna was saying, they come for a multitude of reasons. What are they seeking counseling for? What services are they predominantly coming in for? Give us a little bit of an insight about what that looks like.
Well, they run the gamut. So there's domestic violence, there's sexual assault. We have some that are coming in with just trauma from terrible experiences in the past. We have a new client that had her child was traumatically injured and is handicapped in Egypt that happened, and she came over here and she's never processed it, and she's now finally able to process it in therapy. We have clients who are looking for help with just terrible marriages that are not working for them, that might not be reaching a high abuse level, but it's still, there's some verbal abuse there and some minor abuse still going on that they need counseling through. We're also offering couples counseling to couples that are struggling. We have a client right now that is sleeping in her car, and that comes in for counseling and is being supported. She is also a survivor as well of sexual assault. So it all runs the gamut. We see everything come in through the doors, and then they go into legal and case management for other reasons that I'm not that privy to.
Yeah. Sabrine and anyone else want to add on to that and that question?
I just want to mention also we have Minna who provides anger management for our clients. I don't know, Minna, if you want to say something quickly.
Oh, hello, everybody. It's great to see you all. Ruwaida, it's always a pleasure to see you. Yes, we also provide anger management, which is kind of very specific to Wafa House as it is offered in Arabic. So it is the state curriculum where they will receive 13 weeks of psychoeducation as they had committed a legal crime. And at the end of their completion, they do get a letter to the court that pretty much says they have completed the service. So again, this is very specific to Wafa House as the curriculum is offered in Arabic. And it's something that's definitely needed in our community.
Minna, thank you so much for sharing that. And yes, definitely a hard agree in terms of dealing with that and the varying levels. I think that it comes, the range that it comes in. I think people just always assume the level 100, but I think it's so much more than that. Jasmine, I wanted to ask you a particular question from a legal standpoint. How does Wafa House Legal Department perhaps differ than going to just your run-of-the-mill regular law firm?
Yeah. So I think Waffle House's department is pretty set apart from both other nonprofit agencies that have legal departments and big firms, because big firms, what you're going to find is people who kind of treat family law like it's a business, don't necessarily look to resolving cases, but want to just make money off of people suffering, unfortunately. Of course, that's not everyone, but it's just the reality of sometimes being in that profession where you have to bill and keep things going. And sometimes instead of resolving it, it either delays the case because there's a benefit to delaying it, or maybe inflates the case. So we're really focused on finding solutions for our clients. And then it's not going to look like other legal aid agencies because we spend a lot of time with our clients. We make sure that they know they have personal attention. I think sometimes, again, not always, but sometimes the legal aids have to look at just getting numbers up for grants and all that stuff, which is very understandable. But we spend a lot of time answering phone calls, answering every question, making sure they understand the process and go into every hearing as comfortable as they can be.
So a little bit of a personal question for the staff, but we've discussed a lot of the very heavy elements that comes with doing this work. What makes you continue to do it? Was there a particular success story? Did any of you all have a light bulb moment that made you realize that not just that you're here, but I want to continue to be here, that I want to continue to do this work? And Dr. Hassan, I want to start with you. Do you have a story that kind of sits close to your heart that helps you get through the days that might be more difficult than others?
Honestly, every time I receive a testimony or hear from the team, from Jasmine, from Sabrine, from Elian, everyone here, Asil, Minna, Hiba, like they all share, when you're in the operation side, it's kind of easy to get sucked into like admin stuff and forget about the work, why you're doing the work to begin with. But when we sit in meetings and people start to share, when they start emailing me, oh, we have this client, we closed this client, and this is a success story, it just gives me the motivation to continue doing the work we're doing. So I don't have honestly a particular story because everyone has been unique so far and it's been very inspiring. And it gives me that push to kind of want to continue. And again, as I said, like I dream of Waffle House growing and multiplying. So yeah.
Sabrine or Minna, and any stories that hit close to home for you all?
This is like a hard question because I feel like we've had a lot of success stories like over the past years, especially that I've been here for a while. Honestly, like not everybody is going to have like a successful story. That's the reality of it, unfortunately. But the clients that we have served and the clients that have evolved and became independent, free of their abusers, financially successful, to me those are success stories all around because they were able to start on freeing themselves from being away from that toxic environment, one, and then with the support and help and encouragement, and even from the counseling team, we've always had like clients like go from counseling to case management back and forth, just working with them. So just helping them take that step and being their support system and hearing that we've helped them and they wouldn't be able to do it without us is very rewarding. And we've had a lot of clients that over the years have been able to leave from a financial abusive like relationship to a healthier relationship far away from that and just thrive and become, successful on their own, whether it's working for a company or working for themselves, regardless of what it is, they were able to become independent. And that's like the goal. We want to make sure that, we provide them with that short-term assistance and then for them to go on and become independent women that can rely on themselves and not have to think that, oh, I can't leave or I can't do this on my own because I'm so tied to this person because, I'm relying on them financially for every little thing. But to me, there's so many success stories that have happened at Waffle House. I can't like particularly stick to one, but the one that really resonates with me is one client that the abuse was so severe to the point where like she started having so many like medical issues and physical issues going on with her. And she felt like she was losing herself because health-wise she was not doing great. And eventually she was able to leave and go with a family member and stayed with them for a month. It was during COVID at that time. And during the conversations we've had, she was also getting like counseling services from the counseling team. So she was able to kind of get that mental health support while she was also getting like case management services at the same time. And she was able to eventually find a job. And we've helped pay for her security deposit after she started working, knowing that, financially she'll be able to afford, moving forward her rent on her own. And she was able to continue with her job. And right now she is still working and she lives on her own and she's happy after like, being able to take care of herself and like focus on her health and gaining that independence. So to me that story resonates a lot with me and I always think about her. So yeah.
That's amazing and so beautiful. And I think moments like that help, I think, during the tough times, but also as a testament to the work that you all do. And I think going back to an earlier point of the consequences linger generations, right? A woman who is able to take care of herself and be strong and independent does so for herself and then for her family, and then it is now a strong and thriving woman as a part of her community. And so it's definitely not just this one individual. And I think that's a testament to the work that you all do. I want to give other folks on the staff a chance to jump into the story. I know we've talked about a lot of really heavy things, and so I think this is just a really beautiful way to just uplift one another and give some motivation. And what keeps you all doing this work? Any personal reflections or particular light bulbs any of you all had while here? Sally, Leanne, anyone?
Sorry, I can chime in if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Of course.
My name is Asil. I work in the legal department with Jasmine. I'm the paralegal. I've been here for about almost 2 years now, going on 2 years. And I can say that I've never done nonprofit work, but I've always known about Waffle House. So the moment I saw that there was an opening, I'm in the community, I was very excited. In the beginning, it was very difficult, but each client in the legal department has been thankfully a success. And in the beginning, it's extremely difficult and you don't know how you're going to keep going because you take on that weight from what they're opening up to you and sharing with you. And it's a process built on constant trust with the client. So every time you speak to them, they open up about a different abuse that they've experienced. But something that keeps me personally going and motivated is seeing the complete change in the clients from when they first came to us versus at the end of their trial. So the personal growth, the journey. And I found myself at times gaining strength through them. They are teaching me strength. I was discussing with Jasmine last week about a specific client that when I first started, she was not okay. She was not doing well. And she was just mentally not even able to really speak in a normal way with us due to the trauma that she experienced. And last week when I called to prepare her for a court date, she picked up saying, "Hi, Habibti, Asil, how are you?" with just like such a joyful, beautiful tone and just speaking so beautifully. And she's working full time and trying to provide a life for her and her son. Another client, 2 kids in a shared space. She's making it work and going to nursing school full time. Another client that had a restraining order against her husband, 3 kids, undocumented, doesn't even speak the language. I at times would break down thinking, I don't know how she's going to continue this, right? Because it was just so emotionally difficult. And she kept going. She said, no, this is what I deserve. This is my right. And I'm going to keep going. And she hopped around from shelter to shelter, so strong, not once showing weakness for her kids and for herself. And now she's in a place by herself with her kids. So each client in the beginning starts out so emotionally not kind of all there, and then at the end they're so strong and it's so beautiful to see. So at the end of that, you find yourself thinking, how am I not feeling strong like them? Why am I not taking from them and learning from them how to pour that strength into my life to keep going and to keep doing that work? So that's for us how it is, or for me.
It was incredible. Thank you so much, Asil, for sharing and really showing us the journey that a lot of these women have been on and what that looks like. Anyone else on staff would like to share?
I'll add a little bit. I'm so glad Asil spoke because I was going to call her out anyway and ask her to share. So I'm so proud of her. Everything she said was completely on point and exactly what I was going to say. And the way I think we can best capture it is that they really come broken and literally clueless about what the first step can be to find any repair. And it takes a long time. And there's a lot of times where they want to give up in the process. The first client she was talking about, basically her husband kidnapped her son and she went, I think it was like a year and a half without even seeing him. And now the custody has basically been reversed. So there's something that changes in them where it goes from broken to hopeful. And it impacts every area of their life where they're all of a sudden motivated to get a job, to learn English, even if it's off of YouTube. There's a really big ripple effect that happens. And it takes a lot of resiliency. Even our restraining order clients, I mean, the last restraining order that we had, it was over a period of 11 months that she had to go from hearing to hearing to hearing to hearing. And that's a really intense thing because you're testifying to the abuse that you want to keep private and never think about in front of the person who abused you and strangers. So, excuse me, seeing them be able to do something like that really takes your eyes off of yourself. And it helps you to see that there's a bigger picture. So just getting those little boosts of encouragement where there's a successful outcome, really, like Hesna said at the beginning, there's a motivation to continue when you see that happen and you see the changes that take place in the clients.
Yusra, I saw you unmuted earlier. You wanted to say something, so please go. I'll put you on the spot.
Thank you. Hi everyone. So my name is Yusra and I'm the executive assistant here at Waffle House. I think I'm one of the most newest members to Waffle House. I started in June. And I just it makes me think about the things I was told right before I accepted the job from my family, from friends. A lot of it was supportive, but I know some of the other things were is that the really environment you want to work in? You're going to hear tough cases. It's going to be really difficult. Are you going to be able to separate what you hear and what you take home with you and things like that? But my response was always the same. And it was always I feel powerful enough to do this work because I know I can. Other people know they can't. So it's if you have the ability to do it and to help in any sort of way, do it. I just do it because if you're not gonna do it, no one else is. So that's just always what I believed in, and that's my philosophy, and I just know that if I have the strength to do this now, I'm not gonna ask someone else to do it or wait for someone else to do it. I don't work directly with clients, but I do a lot of the outreach portion of the Waffle House, and just getting our message to the people that really need it is vital, and helping us spread our work and services is just so important, and that's what I love to do. I just love to know that this is an opportunity for people to get the support that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusra. It's so wise. You do it because you know you can. I love that so much. I am in awe of the strength of all of the women that are here who continue to do this work, who keep the organization thriving and working. The entire team is so beautifully complementary to one another. And I think that is among the reasons why the women in this community are able to get the resources and the help and be on these really incredible journeys that you all have mentioned. And so I know it can be a thankless industry. And so I wanted to send my personal gratitude for everyone on the team and all that you all do. Know that you are seen and that you are appreciated and that you are all valued in your very individual capacities in contributing to the betterment of our women in this very real, very difficult issue. Hiba, I know you wanted to chime in, so please, would love to hear from you. Is she able to speak?
I think she might be having some mic issues. I think because she's unmuting, but it's not coming through. Feel free to.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Sorry, I've been trying to say something and I thought you guys can hear me. I'm sorry about that. My name is Hiba Jan and I am one of the case managers. I actually just received a testimonial today at the end of the day and it just made my day. So this client, when she called me, she was going through emotional breakdown and she already has a situation with her son and she was going through emotional abuse, I would say, and she just saw everything dark. So today when she called, she was all happy and hyped. Of course, I made the counseling referral and she's starting soon with one of the counselors. And she was just telling me, she said, I'm just calling. I was actually a little bit surprised that she called because my work with her is done. So she called and she said, I just want to thank you so much and thank Waffle House and the counseling team for taking me. And she told me, like, literally, when you called me, like, I don't know who told you to call me. Like, I felt like it was a message from God, but like, I was literally like sitting by the ocean and just like in a very, very dark place. And when with the things you said and the way you calmed me down, like, I felt it was a blessing and that it actually changed my perspective to things. And it just made me have hope for counseling. Because at some point she was like, you know what? I'm probably not gonna get counseling. Like I'm just gonna have to deal with it on my own. So we kept trying, and she because sometimes in counseling, with all the stories and the women and stuff, like we actually like have a list, like a waiting list. So with her situation, they actually contacted her like faster than she expected. And she was just so happy. And when she was talking, I can tell the tone of her voice is so like upbeat and like she's very happy. And I told her, like, I can already sense, like, you didn't even start the sessions, and I can already sense that you're in a good place. So, the way she was like, please thank everybody. I haven't been able to tell anybody about this, share it with the team. But it's just like, just say thank you to everybody at Waffle House, and like, thank you guys for like, taking me on and taking on people like me that need assistance, especially with counseling. And, because you know how like the stigma is, and if you don't share the same culture, the same language, sometimes your point of view of things or how you're feeling doesn't get across, right? So yeah, I just wanted to share that with everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing it. I think that's it, like Hasna was saying earlier, what better way to understand the impact of the work than directly through the clients themselves. So thank you so much for sharing, Hiba, and jumping on. Thank you all for listening to me, but giving me the honor and engaging you and the entire staff in such a invigorating and critical and important conversation. I'm so honored and so grateful and so in awe of all of the work that you all do. Dr. Hasna, I turn it back to you now for you to close us off, and just wanted to thank your leadership and the team that you have. It is definitely one that is such a blessing to work with everyone here. So Dr. Hasna, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rhoda. And yes, absolutely. It's a privilege. It's so humbling to be working alongside our team. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We're going to stop recording right now, but if anybody